Welcome to the very first tutorial, and we're starting off on color theory, but only one part of color theory, which is opposite colors. We are just going to go over opposite colors and how it applies in certain tools in Lightroom. I'm not going to talk about color harmonies, color schemes, complementary colors, which are all just combinations of colors that visually work well with each other, but rather we're concentrating on opposite colors. To complete beginners, this might seem a bit advanced, and it is, but at least a bit of an understanding of these opposite colors will go a really long way when you're learning the Lightroom tools that we'll be covering after this, as it applies and is essential to almost every tool in Lightroom. So this is a video you'll want to revisit. As a beginner, you'll feel overwhelmed, but trust me, try to understand this to the best of your ability, and it will make learning the Lightroom tools much easier. So I thought I would cover opposite colors before going over Lightroom tools from the top of the panel to the bottom, as I would be lightly explaining opposite colors in each of these tools anyway. So opposite colors, and why is it important to know? As you would know, editing photos requires the manipulation of colors. So when you make adjustments to colors, they interact with each other. If you change one color, you'll affect another in a way you wouldn't expect to. That's why so many people find editing so frustrating. So it's not as simple as shifting one color, such as a red, to a bit more of an orange. All of the colors, they interact with each other. So if you shift one color, it may ruin your other colors that you just had perfect. Luckily, there are only 3 opposite color combinations you have to remember: yellow and blue, purple and green, red and cyan. Now, if I show you a color wheel, here we have all the colors necessary to create any color you want. And as I said before, each of these colors has an opposite color, and here we have the 3 we want to memorize that I mentioned before: yellow and blue, green and purple, red and cyan. And as you can see, they are all located opposite each other on this wheel. Now, all the color grading tools, whether you're using Lightroom, editing photos, Final Cut Pro, editing video, or Premiere Pro, all require the same understanding of opposite colors. Whenever you're working with colors, you need to know how these colors interact and which are opposite to each other. They all work the same way. So let's do an example. So many tools confuse beginners, especially the curves and especially color wheels. Now, this tool here is a great simplification of adding and subtracting colors. So it'll be really easy to show you guys. Now, this tool, everything above this line here is adding in colors. So adding in red, and everything below is subtracting. So it's easy enough to understand. If we add red into the image, our image becomes more red. But what's harder to understand is, what if we take red out of the image and we go this way? Well, our image starts to go cyan or blue. So we need to know the opposite colors, and this is true for the yellow. And what if we take yellow out? We get blue. If we add greens in, what happens if we take greens out? We get purple. What if we add purples in up here and take purples out? We get green. So you need to know this off the top of your head for just 6 sets of colors. So 3 pairs, yellow and blue. So yellow, adding yellow in, get blue. Adding red in, we get cyan, and then green and purples. So you add greens in, you get purples if you take greens out. That's all you need to memorize. So let's jump into Lightroom and show how this can apply in Lightroom and editing photos. The first example is the temperature slider, whether you want to add yellows into the image for a warm vibe or blues into the entire image for a cool vibe. And the second example is white balance. So in this image, the yellow lights on the edge of the bed have created an unnatural cast of yellow over the entire image. And I need to add coolness or blue, the opposite of yellow, to make my whites white. These sheets are white, and by adding blue, we take out that yellow to white balance our image. Moving on to the tint slider, so green and purple. Now, some images have an unnatural cast of green or purple in the image, and in this one, for example, we've got an unnatural cast of green due to the water and the reflection of the water creating unnatural skin tones. So if I add in more purple, I get a more natural skin tone. So you can think of it as I add more purple in, I'm not making the skin tone more purple, but I'm making it less green, because purple is opposite of green. And then if we use temperature and the tint sliders for skin tone, so in this image, for example, the skin tones seem a little too warm, so I'll cool it off by adding blue in, but then our image becomes too cold and purple. So then if I take purple out or add green in, I can make a much more natural skin tone. Okay, let's go over to our last example, the RGB curves. So here we have our red channel, our green channel, and our blue channel. So if we come over to the red channel and we subtract the color red from our image by pulling the curve down, you can see we introduce its opposite color, cyan, like we did earlier. And then watch what happens if we lift the curve, we introduce more reds into the image. And then if we go over to another curve, say the blue curve, and we just lift the curve, you can see more blue is introduced into the image. And then if we subtract it by pulling the curve down, we get its opposite color, which is yellow. And then onto the last curve, the green curve. So if we lift it, we get green, pull it down, we get purple, which is its opposite. So again, if we lift it, we get green introduced into the image. So it's really important to understand these opposite colors, because nothing about the Lightroom application lets you know what changes will be made to colors when you introduce or subtract a color. So let's go into advanced example tutorial right now. So if we just use this image again, and let's just concentrate on this orange bit right here. So I want to add, for example, lots of purple into the shadows. So if I come over here and I just put an over exaggerated amount just to show you guys, and I lift the purples up a lot, you can see our once orange area is now a much deeper red. So I knew that was going to happen, and if we take a look at a color wheel and we look where the brighter oranges are and where the purples are, we can expect to meet somewhere in the middle of those. Okay guys, to summarize, we've gone over how color wheels work, how every color has an opposite color, and how they interact with each other if you add or subtract a color. So we need to know the RGB, the red, the green, and the blue, and their opposite colors, because once you know that, you know the entire color wheel. You know the opposite of each of those colors. So green and purple, red and cyan, blue and yellow. And I suggest you just sit there and play with the curves inside Lightroom. Just pull down the red curve and try to guess or tell yourself what you think what color might be introduced. And then when you get really good, you'll be able to do things such as, if you add yellow and cyan together, you'll get green, or cyan and purple, you'll get blue, when you get a bit more of an advanced level. And this is very necessary to know if you ever want to get to a high level of editing. If you ever want to make your own presets or LUTs or anything like that, understanding this is pretty fundamental. So it's a bit advanced for beginners, but if you just have a light understanding, a bit of understanding of this stuff, all the other tools will probably come a lot more easier to you, and then you can always come back and reference this when you think you're ready. Okay, I'll see you guys in the next one.